Welcome to the Adam Michael channel. Today I wanted to go over the story behind the lead single off my new EP, and the single is called The Doorway. So I originally got this idea for the song back in 2020. My wife and I were riding in the car in a park in Long Island, and I think I was listening to Jimi Hendrix, and the idea or the phrase doors of perception came to mind. It may have been referenced in a Hendrix song, or it may have been kind of a combination of different words that he uses in his songs. But that phrase just stuck with me, and I started, thinking about what that phrase could mean in the context of a song or an original song. So, with this song, Jimi Hendrix style of psychedelic rock seemed to be a good fit, not just because that's what I was listening to, but the phrase doors of perception has this kind of dreamy, imaginative idea behind it. So I thought, especially with Jimmy's lighter stuff and the psychedelic effects that he used, I thought that would be a good fit for what I want to do with this song. So I remember actually going out one night and kind of prospecting different songs that I thought it could sound like, or I thought that would be a good influence for it. Many of them were from Jimi Hendrix's The Jimi Hendrix Experience album. I remember listening to Red House and May This Be Love. I also listened to Siamese Dream and Pisces Iscariot by the Smashing Pumpkins for inspiration on how I wanted the guitars to sound. And I was pleased with at least in tonally, how that turned out. I was using budget equipment, very inexpensive combo amps, solid state amps, so nothing too fancy. But I was pleased with how the sound came out. But in terms of the lyrics, I'd been reading a book called Doldrums and the Divine Breath by my friend Carl S. Johnson. And in that book, he discusses a lot of what creativity feels like to those who are experiencing a creative moment and maintaining inspiration throughout the creative process. And he also talks about how people receive divine inspiration to do different things. For example, write a book. In this case, for me, work on music, try to release music. And it's not a big, flowery, thunder from the mountain type of idea. I mean, I suppose it could be. But in the more day-to-day living, when it comes to inspiration and prayer and asking for guidance, it's much more subtle. So this song is about how I attempt to walk through the creative process through prayer and asking for guidance along the way. For example, which direction to take the song, what could be some good influences, what are some good metaphors that I could use, what are some good topics to explore. And doing that in prayer, I find that really eases the creative process along. And in biblical terms, the Bible talks about God giving wisdom to those who ask for it, and the Holy Spirit being a helper. So when I am pursuing a creative idea, whether it's music or art or even something simple at work like dealing with people at work, I normally pray about, what can I do here? I don't understand this situation, please help. And then I wait until I guess, feel an answer appear. Okay. And I'm sure there are other ways of walking through the inspirational process and the prayerful guidance process, but that's how I experience it. So I wanted to take that experience and turn it into a song, because it's not something that I've heard people explore lyrically or musically. So I wanted to make sure to include something like that on the album. And musically, I was happy with how the contrast between the verse and the chorus turned out. I thought the verse was a good lead up. How I think it ended up turning out is more like an Incubus type of clean riff. When they do a clean riff, a lot of times they'll apply what's called modulation effects to make a kind of psychedelic sound. And I thought the chorus, when it came in, provided some good contrast with that verse. It's a very clean psychedelic type of verse and a very hard rock, I hesitate to use the word grunge, maybe alternative rock type of riff in the chorus. And I thought that that riff in the chorus made a good bed for a vocal melody. Okay, so I'm using they're not open chords, but they're chords that ring out. And when a person uses, I'll just call them ringing chords, it gives a lot of room to fit a melody into that bed of sound. And then moving forward, it helped to write the melody using a guitar to pick out the notes, rather than kind of testing out different notes just with my voice, with limited control over where the note is going to go or what frequency it's going to be. Some people are really great at that. They can kind of hear the melody in their head before they apply it. With this song, I wanted to test out different notes in combination to see where they would go, and I used a guitar to do that. And then once that melody was recorded, I sang over it once I had lyrics figured out. So that was helpful in designing the melody. As I said earlier, I recorded everything using budget amps, budget electric drum kit, budget microphones, and I was pleased with how the mix turned out. It's nice to have really high quality gear to record with, but if you want to put an idea forward, you can do it using whatever you have if you're willing to work at it. When I came to the time to mix, I found it most difficult, as with every song on this EP, I found it most difficult to mix the bass and the drums. I'm not really a drummer or a bass player. I think in terms of layered guitars, chord coloring, and vocal. So getting the drums and the bass to sit in the mix well and translate to different stereo systems, I found it to be very difficult. When I would listen to it with my computer headphones, for example, it would sound different on my commercial earbuds. And I realized I'd have to turn the bass down, but then it's like, once I turn the bass down, is the bass going to disappear when I put it on my Vizio sound bar? Or in the car. So trying to find that balance and get it to work in different places is a challenge with any mix. But for me, especially using bass and drums, I do find that to be difficult. And on top of that, I used a guitar and an octave pedal to create the bass, so it wasn't even a official bass guitar. So those are some of the challenges I had in the recording and mixing process. In hindsight, I probably would have pulled back the top end or the high end a bit. It's a bit, I'll use the word crispy or crunchy. I would have liked to have had a little bit more of a mellow sound. Subsequently to mixing this whole record, I started using a plugin that simulates a professional mixing room. And in hindsight, I probably would have started using that from the beginning instead of just putting it on at the end and doing the mix. I would have done all of the equalization and compression panning everything with that piece of software rather than just bringing it in at the end. I think it would have made a more consistent and realistic mix. And I think I probably would have added a little less volume to contrast the verse and the chorus. Again, when you're hearing it in headphones, it sounds different than out in the wild or in the field, or that's, I guess, a more academic way of putting it. But when you're translating it to like a living room stereo system, it does sound different. And in this case, the volume wasn't as consistent across different sections of the song as I would have liked. So if I do choose to go back and remaster this series of songs, I probably would have started with that piece of software that emulates a mixing room, and I think I would have gotten better sounding and more consistent results. But overall, I was pleased with how it turned out. This was one of the first sets of recordings that I made and one of the first songs that I mixed. So to be able to design a product that I thought was reasonably ready to put out in the real world was very rewarding. So thanks for taking the time to listen today. I appreciate your time. If you liked what I had to say, please make sure to check out my music as the Shimmering Carnelians. And please make sure to like and subscribe. It's a big encouragement to me, and it does encourage me to continue making music and making videos. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.